So this is going to be a two-part video because it ended up being quite long because I wanted to do it thorough, showing all the details. So part one is going to be looking at the induction stove, and part two is going to be looking at the air fryer and sort of the overall conclusion of cooking with electric off-grid in vans. So check out part two if you want to know about the air fryer, and we'll stick here if you want to know about the induction hob. So welcome back to my channel, Mispronounced Adventures, and these next two episodes are about off-grid electric cooking, or how I do off-grid electric cooking in my van. So I use an induction stove and I use an air fryer, and that does me for all the cooking that I want to do. The episode's going to be about not so much the cooking itself, but about the technical information behind it. So looking at how much energy is used cooking everyday things in the van. So people could sort of come away with an idea of is it going to be suitable for their electrical system and then for their van. So let's jump into it. So first big question is, why did I go no gas? Couple reasons. One, I didn't want to add an additional fuel source. I did at one point have an LPG tank and a stove, but I never had them rigged up, and I've got rid of them subsequently. In the UK, LPG is becoming a little bit more difficult to source at petrol stations. Less people are having it or stocking it still. And the other option would have been the sort of bottle exchange system like Calagas. The other reason is a slight design issue with my layout is I've got my diesel heater and my hot water heater, which is in the cupboard under here, right below where the hob would be, and that cupboard gets really warm in the winter when I'm running the diesel heater a lot, and I don't like the idea of continuous contraction and expansion of the compression fittings of the gas pipes, so I decided to go against gas. Additionally, I found after I put my lithium batteries in last year that I actually had quite a large system and stock of energy, which I was very rarely dipping down into the state of charge, so it made it a viable idea. For the American viewers, probably cooking with induction's nothing new. For the British viewers, it seems to be there's a really small section of British self-builders who get really angry if you decide to use induction or electrics for cooking. They just go on about how caravans and camper vans have used gas since the 1960s, and they sort of act like at some point an induction stove kicked their dog. I did just want to bring up the point that I don't have any issues, obviously, with gas being used in a van. Just with my electrical system, it was perfectly viable to go electric only. And I do actually have my gas stove, my camping gas stove in the van if I ever want a second hob or if I want to cook outside al fresco. But I thought it'd be best to mention that because for a small section of British viewers, it will be absolute blasphemy that I've gone no gas in my van. Oh, well, those select few people are welcome to go spoon their Calagas bottle if that's what they're into. So to move on, we're going to quick look at the electrical system, so we've got an idea of what my actual system is to run all of this, and then we'll sort of look at the cooking bits itself. So I'll quickly show you my electrical system so you have an idea of what's behind all the electrics. So this is my electrical cupboard, plenty of videos on what's going on here. Batteries, I've got three, one, two, and there's a third one over there. They are from an electric vehicle, and I've got 390 amp hours in total, about 330 amp hours of usable energy, down to a depth of discharge for 20%. They're running at 12 volt. I have a 1600 VA 12 volt multi-plus inverter from Victron. So that's 1600 VA. The actual wattage is 1300 watts at 25 degrees, and slightly lower the hotter it gets. Battery to battery charger for 30 amp from the engine. And up on the roof, I've got two 250 watt polycrystalline solar panels. These are just house size panels. Total of 500, but in full sun, the highest I've got out of them is 594 watt, which is about 20% above its rated amount, which I'm pretty happy with. I don't have an unboxing or an installation of this induction hob, so I'm going to do a dramatic recreation of the installation process. Installing? Oh no, I have a huge hole in my worktop where my gas stove used to be. Glad that's solved. The actual Sterling unit itself, glass top, and it has this separate little control system. If I'm honest, the control system is a little bit plasticky. It'd be nice if they were touch controls instead on the actual face, but I think mounting them at the back at an angle has worked out quite well for what I'm happy with. So we're going to do a little test, and I'm also going to demonstrate that. I'm going to turn this on in a minute to setting 8, which is what it would pull 1500 watts, and we're going to test just to show you the difference between a small pan, my Baretti coffee maker, and my induction toasty maker and show how 1500 watts on maximum mode is not 1500 watts all the time. So I'm going to have my, I'm going to screen record this and have it showing up about here. So I'm going to turn it on and we're going to set it to function mode 8. I'm going to put my stove on. So in function mode 8, that is pulling 1350 watts. Turn that off. Still remaining on setting 8. Putting my toasty maker on, and that is only pulling 900 watts. Still on its maximum mode, but it should be pulling 1500. Small pan. Small pan pulls 1190. And the biggest object I think I've got, which is this grill pan, this should pull the full 1500. Yeah, 1400 odd. That's going to start to overload the inverter. So they go 1415. So that's just showing on setting 8, where it should be pulling 1500 watts. The power mode is relative to what you've put on the stove. Also, you'll notice whenever I lift up the item off the stove, it automatically gives me error 0, which turns off and doesn't waste electricity because there's nothing for it to do. The reason I bring up the pan sizes is if you've got a 1600 VA multi-plus like I do, or a smaller inverter, it's quite hard to find small wattage induction stoves. So it means if you're looking at buying pans, if you buy small to medium pans, they don't have a higher wattage draw and the higher power settings. It will just stop you overloading your inverter as easily. So I'm going to do sort of a real world example of using the induction stove opposed to sort of boiling a litre of water and so on. I'm going to make a coffee on my Beretti coffee maker. This is their induction version, just because the bottom section is stainless steel, opposed to normally there'd be aluminium, which isn't ferrous, so it wouldn't work for induction. I'm going to run the Victron VRM, and I'm just going to make a coffee, then we'll just sort of see like the energy usage on there. I'm just going to turn off my solar, just so it doesn't sort of interact with the electrics of what we're using whilst it's on. So solar is turned off. Right, so we'll make a coffee. Right, put that on there. And we're not going to have it on 8 because that'd be way too fast. So, so on there, that's on setting 5, just using about 1000 watts at the minute, and that's running about 93 amp at 12 volt. So we're just going to let that run and then come back to it at the end, and sort of we can have a look at what energy's been used. Started at about 97% power. I will add, whilst we're doing this, there are a few other loads in the system as well, because I've currently got all the lights on just so it's a bit brighter inside for filming. So there's a little bit of a difference between the actual AC loads and the overall discharge. Right, so brewed, stop that there. Right, 1 pint of coffee, how I usually start my day. And it looks like we used about 1.3% of my overall power to make that, and that took 4 minutes 50. So, right, there's one test. Let's try some others. I did say there'll be no cooking in this video because I can't cook, but now we're going to do some cooking. Well, welcome back to Mispronounced Cooking with Alex, and today I'm going to show you how to cook in a van for people who can't cook. You can tell I'm not really a cooking enthusiast because I don't have a spice rack. And we're going to cook toasted cheese sandwiches today, but using electricity. I have an induction toasty maker. Basically looks like a toasty maker from non-induction, only with metal in it, with ferrous metal in it. And I'm going to make toasties, and it's sort of what I go to a lot if I wanted to make food pretty quick in lunch, pretty easy. So we're going to need some bread. Make sure you have a nice tidy workstation before you start. 2 of them. Get some butter. Remember to wash your hands before you cook. I definitely did that off camera, honest. And we're going to butter the bread. There we go, we're going to open up. Now it's important to remember the butter is on the outside. Let's part the other one as well. There we go. Step 1 done. Knife somewhere. Stage 2, mayonnaise. Mayonnaise on the inside. Nicely paint it up and down there. Nice bit of mayo. Cheese. Wouldn't be a cheese toastie without cheese. This is not a very big block of cheese. Stack it all up in there. There we go. More mayonnaise. Optional extras if you've got stuff in the fridge. Smoked sausage, ham, whatever, chuck it in there. Condiments, pepper. I haven't got any pepper. You could put pepper in there. Put mayo on top, you got your last buttered one on there. Close it up. Put the end out, there you are. Toasty, sorted. Let's change the camera angles up, let's set the monitor up. No idea what I'm really doing, trying to be a cook show here. And let's get this cooked. What am I doing? Right, so we're going to do the same again. I'm going to run the Victron VRM and we're going to cook the toasty and basically we're going to see how much it uses up. And I want to again put the screen on here, which is now recording, up onto as a pop-up so you can see what's going on. For anyone who wants to know, most toasties, like the Ridge Monkey, is super popular for like people cooking in vans. It's just basically 2 frying pans which clamp together. Though there was absolutely none of them seem to work with induction. I found this one on Amazon for 14 quid and it's been absolutely brilliant. So put it back on there. Same again, turn it way down to like setting 4 or 5 because I find if I use 6, 7, 8 I burn things way too quick. And we're just going to let the it cook. So when this is cooking, this uses about well, it's currently using 830 watt to cook on setting 5, which is about 71 amps. I have got the solar currently on, so there's a bit of energy coming in from the sun. But you'll be able to see on the pop-up the sort of amount of power it uses. Really important when cooking with the induction toasty maker, turn it over quite often. The main learning curve for me switching from using gas normally to induction was just figuring out different power settings on what that normally equates to cooking wise. And now we watch food cook. Not really got anything to do whilst this cooks because my phone is screen recording, so I can't play on my phone, so I'm just going to stand here and get sped up really. So, what are you up to, you know? Post any comments down below. What do you think of induction cooking? There we go, cooked. And only used a couple % of power again. I have a lot more cooking to do for this video, so I'm going to go find someone to go give this toasty to. We'll be back in a minute. Toasty beauty shots. And there we have it, a cheese toasty. Which I think I overdid because half the cheese is leaking out. One of the final points I wanted to talk about with induction is how it works. And quite often you'll hear people having a go about using induction saying it's really inefficient. In efficiency terms, that's actually wrong. Efficiency for an induction stove is about 95% of the actual energy you put in goes into the object you're heating, whilst for gas it's only about 40 to 50%. But the point they're trying to actually make by saying that is it uses a lot of electricity, and talking about efficiency is kind of wrong. So the way induction stoves actually work is they're different than a sort of resistive heater. They are an electromagnet, and that alternates the current at extremely high speeds, and that causes the ferrous material on top, the magnetic material on top, to heat up. And it sort of works in a ring, so I'm going to quickly show you that on the stove at the minute because I've got some water boiling. So you can see on the stove at the moment we have the water boiling, and you can see there's a ring around it. So that's actually how these devices work. There's a magnetic coil which is circular, being a coil, and that's directly heating the metal material. So it's not heating the glass it's on, it's actually heating the pan, which is why you need special pans as such, or a pan which has is made of a ferrous material or has a ferrous plate in it. And the way a lot of these induction stoves work is the higher modes are a changing power setting, and then when you get to the lower mode it's a pulse. Not all the case, but on this one anything below power setting 1, 2 and 3 is pulsing about 800 watt, and anything above it is increasing the wattage, which we should be able to get a good example when I drop down to the setting 3. So we're just going to let it cool down a little bit. There we go. And you can hear the pulses just come back on again. It's got its ring, and then the pulses has gone off. Some of the stoves will do this pulsing option on a lower setting. This might be important if you've got a smaller inverter, whilst things like, I believe the Vango sizzle stoves, they are 800 watts and below, and I believe they are a constant wattage opposed to a pulsating on off in the lower power modes. And then on the lowest mode, it's just a slight change in the frequency of the pulse. So you can see on these lower modes, you can see the circle heat up. There we go. I'm going to turn that off. Just to show you a good example of induction cookware. So these are both Tesco's basic. I find most basic pans you can buy in supermarkets now work with induction. These are aluminium, which means they are not ferrous, but most of them have implanted a steel, I presume steel, or a ferrous plate in here, so they do work with induction, whilst the rest of the body is still aluminium. And being the basics, they are reasonably cheap as well. The other big complaint I hear when people mention, oh, I've gone for electric only cooking or induction, is someone always complains that, oh, you've got to spend $2,500 or whatever to have the battery bank and the chargers and the solar to support it. Well, I find it's quite often the case that the person using the induction or electric cooking hasn't upgraded their electrical system to support it. They've built their electrical system in the first place because they want high energy demands in their van, and as a byproduct they can use induction as a viable option for their cooking, which is what it was in my case. To begin with, I had AGM and I was planning for gas, and the gas was the plan all along, and then I got these second-hand electric vehicle batteries, which then opened up electric cooking as an option or induction as an option, which is why I went for it, which I find is more often the case opposed to people directly upgrading their electrical system particularly for induction. Well, that's my take on it, at least. So I'm pretty much going to end the video of part 1 talking about off-grid cooking using an induction stove here. So if you like what you've seen, feel free to subscribe, leave a like and a comment if you have any questions, and head over to part 2 when you want to see about the air fryer and sort of the overall conclusion of my solution to off-grid cooking. Once again, thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Also interested to hear what you think of the slightly different video format I've done recently. I'm having audio issues with the mic on my main camera, and since I've got one of the new iPhone 12 Pro Maxes, the 4K and the audio seems to be pretty good, so I've used that for a few shots, and actually most of this video. So tell me what you think video wise compared to my other stuff, using the iPhone for most of the filming. Some of my viewers may have noticed that the last 2 videos have taken place in the same spot, and that's because I drove from Ullapool in northwest Scotland all the way down to southern England over the course of the trip, about 800 miles, and 7 miles before I got to my destination, which was luckily my parents' house, my clutch failed. And whilst it's only a 3-year-old van, it's got 93,000 miles on it, which is an alright lifespan for a clutch, but that's the reason I can't go anywhere. I physically can't drive the van because the clutch is gone, and it's getting repaired next week.